YouTube. There we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the New Media Show. And yes, Rob is here.
Yeah, I was just on a 10-day trip back to Seattle to spend time with my dad.
I think you told me, but I think I just forgot. So
That's
anyway,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
a couple of people applied for your job last week.
I
So
would imagine probably so. Yeah.
hence why those of you I haven't replied via email.
Well, yeah, Todd, sometimes it's good to kind of, shake things up a little bit and try to get people's attention, right?
Yeah, well,
Around,
I guess, so what's funny is I had put together some talking points today, and so did you. So we kind of get a
yeah.
mismatch of stuff in two different docs. But
Well, I think they're all good topics, so I guess it depends on how long of an episode we want to make.
well, we're going to try to keep a couple of suggestions that had come in via the boost was keep it to 60 minutes. Don't go 90. So
That's what I was thinking too, actually. If you see in my outline, it says 60 minutes on it.
yeah,
Right?
we'll try. We'll see. There is a couple of good things though that popped today, and it's kind of funny because I had run into a bunch of people at the podcast show and said we got to start changing the narrative. We got to get off this. We need to recapture the narrative that audio is still good, and it's so funny because this article by Paul, from Paul Rivendell, and his YouTube isn't dominating podcasting is probably what I would consider probably one of the more balanced pieces that I've seen in a while. And
Paul's from Signal Hill Research. And I thought it was an interesting article too. But Todd, I think we both kind of knew in the back of our minds that was probably true. And increasingly we're seeing evidence that audio podcasting is still very strong.
Well, it's not evidence. We know it's strong. That's the key.
Well,
yeah.
That's only in comparison to, I guess, what the focus that's been so heavily on the video side. And so I think that if you look at Apple Podcasts, and we can talk a little bit about what Apple Podcasts announced at the WWDC also, that has an impact on podcasting, but they still haven't done what we both hope that they would have. But, but we'll see if that's still coming. But this whole thing around, the importance of audio is certainly, I have this perception that I've been like all this pro video stuff, but if you really listen to what I've said over the last few months and really, and I'm trying to emphasize this again because I think that it's been confused. My position on this is that video is kind of like getting more attention now, right? But nonetheless, the history of podcasting, and if you just look at the contrast between consumption of podcasts on iOS versus Android too, I think it gives you a kind of a better picture of what's happening here to some degree. But audio is still growing, and it's still a significant contributor to the success of podcasting. And I think video has just gotten more attention because it's kind of like you said, Todd, it's a little bit of a, it's the shiny thing that's kind of in the space right now. And I think maybe this conversation, and this is what I kind of teased on my YouTube channel, is kind of navigating podcasting's confusing future, because I think it is a confusing landscape, especially for new creators entering the space that are seeing all of this crazy discussion around how video is taking over, but yet it's difficult to do video. But I think it's even more complex than just that singular issue around how people are getting attention now, personal branding, and all these elements. And the other truth is that big shows are growing faster than small shows are. And I think that's something that we have to focus on too, of how do we help small startup audio podcasts grow in this new
Well,
landscape, right?
again, the conversations that I am having, as I said before, they feel disenfranchised. They feel left out. They are being left behind. They feel that, and I talked with Chris Hermosis. I apologize, Chris. I always destroy your last name, from Podfest, and he thinks that 85% of the podcast market doesn't care about. I've always said 70%. He said he's more like 85. Of course, he works in the indie, so he's more slanted on indie than commercial, I think. And he kind of had a tendency to agree with me that we're disenfranchising a lot of potential. And I have a suspicion that maybe part of this discussion is that those that are monetizing and those businesses, maybe they're starting to see a decline of new talent and new shows coming in, and maybe they're worried just a little bit. And maybe this is where they go, oh, the golden goose.
What specifically are you talking about? Are you talking about the podcast hosting companies?
Well, no, I'm talking about creators.
I thought that you were talking about platforms.
No, well, what I'm talking about is basically that there's this creator economy that is definitely has two camps, and the camp that's in the back in the deep grass that's not being paid attention to too much are feeling disenfranchised. They don't want to do video, or they're concerned they have to do video. Someone that's getting in the space thinks they want to do video. So anyway, it's a conversation we've already had. But again, it goes back to where
you're talking about audio first creators. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, in essentially audio, it's brand new creators that want to do a podcast, but they're telling me, Todd, I don't want to do video. Not everyone says that. I
would say that's I think it's a spectrum too.
It is. It is.
How do you get into video if you're an audio podcaster? I think is the conversation that we need to have. It's like what's the easy way to start doing some video, but not have it take over your life?
No, what the conversation is you need to start with audio and then figure out if you want to do video.
Well, yeah, but I do think that there are trends in the market that would point you to this perspective that doing some video is probably a smart way to build your brand awareness for yourself,
no doubt,
as well as potentially grow some interest in your audio podcast.
No doubt, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to do video. There's a percentage.
Is it because they're over thinking it because of what they see with the big creators? Right?
I'm sure it all adds. I'm sure it all adds to it.
These fancy sets, all these fancy lights,
all of it,
fancy cameras, all that stuff are not really necessary.
But is the perception, and it is the overwhelming thing that they're facing. And they say, I don't have a face. I don't want to be on video. So it runs all the things we've heard for years, but it's more amplified now. But the problem is, again, this is what I'm hearing as a podcast host. You can hear it in their voice. I want to do a podcast, but everyone's telling me I have to do video. I don't do video. And I go back to the same conversation we've had 100 times. You can start with audio, build your audience, find your voice, and build into this. So I think that there's two challenges here. Those are existing content creators. They're adding elements and doing stuff in video. They're going to do that if they want to build their show.
Yeah.
And, we're going to see that. But the true challenge, the true thing that is at risk for the entire space is new creators. And if the new creators are not coming in and they're not have the opportunity to build a big show or build a show that's growing, and there's plenty of opportunity to, huge opportunity to. So...
Well, I think the really, really big question, Todd, of all this is, are you really going to be able to grow your podcast audience just doing audio only.
I think
Right.
so. I think it's
Well,
if you have great
I don't know that
content.
there's a lot of evidence of that, Todd.
Huh?
So
We see
I
shows
think,
growing all the time. We have a
well,
whole stack
yeah,
of shows that are growing that are audio only.
okay. Then why aren't there new creators? I mean, usually the new creators follow success, right? So is there something about audio now that is not working, right?
I don't. I think
Based on the expectations of the audience. And I guess my increasing thought is that we need to do, as an industry, we need to do a better job of helping those audio creators determine what the best path forward is to actually grow their show, not just concept. It may be, Todd, and I'm just
sure.
throwing the baby out there,
Yeah.
and hopefully it doesn't go with the bathwater, but it's to, think about ways that we can help those audio creators be successful, and what are the pathways for helping them accomplish that. And if it includes some, like maybe just doing short form video, vertical video that's put out there as a personal brand development. I'm starting to talk more and more about how important it is to build personal brand of the host, even over building the brand of the podcast, as the key to growing now. And that may include building your reputation in the area or the genre that you're doing your podcast about. And yeah.
Great content is going to succeed.
Well, that's a given now. It's almost like that's table stakes, but it's also very, very, very subjective to say it's got to be good content. Well, what does it look like to make good content?
It's subjective.
It is. And I think that is one of those things that if we keep telling new creators, well, it's got to be great content, then they're going to be confused because they don't know what great content looks like, or
I think
what's the expectation in the market.
I think my expectation as a podcaster is feedback, engagement of the
That
community.
takes time, doesn't it?
Sure.
It takes time to get
Yeah.
feedback. A lot of creators, when they get started, they don't get any feedback.
Well, that's true. And
And so they get lost in this quagmire of feeling like you're speaking alone into the microphone and nobody's listening. And so a period of time goes by where maybe there's a chance the show isn't growing, but what can they do to be able to find that audience that would be interested in their show? And I think that's the challenge.
Every creator today, and it hasn't changed from the beginning of time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
has to do a whole bunch of stuff. And usually they're wearing one hat.
Yeah.
They have to do all the things that, you have to be out there in social. You have to be, promoting your episodes. You have to be clipping. None of this has changed. None of it. None of those fundamentals, participating in community, going where your listeners are, all that stuff still applies. Here's the problem. Everyone wants a damn easy button.
Yeah, right, of course.
And there's no easy button. You got to work. And, we had a call yesterday. We have office hours every Tuesday. And, had a great conversation with podcasters. And we were talking about stats specifically. As spent an hour on stats. And, again and again and again. And I was blown away. Thank you for what you're doing. We're having great success with our show. We're reaching people. And, I'm hearing from these people that, the other calls I'm having during the week are, I want to grow my show. Help me grow my show. And all these other folks are on the call yesterday. We're like, oh, we're doing good. We're growing. We're talking with sponsors. And these were folks that have been but the average age of all of those podcasts that were, I think there was 14 on the call, 2 years plus, actually 3 years plus. So there wasn't anyone in the call that was in that 0 to 3 years, because I was trying to get a feel where everyone was at. So I was enthused. I was like, oh my God, we got all the folks on this call are 3+ year podcasters and they're loving what they're doing. Yeah. But I think social media and branding I've talked about it. You and I've talked about it's critical,
Yeah. It just may be more important now than ever. And I don't know that there's a clear, or I don't know that there's been clear, I guess, communication to new creators around, what the best pathway is on how to do all this stuff. But, it's going to be different for everybody, and it may not work for everybody. That's the reality of it.
And I've got a doc somewhere that I have, like, it's like I used to call it like a 13-step plan or something like that. And I have not, I used to speak on it. Matter of fact, I have to dig those out. It was all about, these are the things you have to do. And, the video component is probably the 14th now, the 14th or 14, 15, 16th item. But, as a solo, as an indie with no staff, how have I been able to multiply my time? I've finally got someone that helps me with pre-production. They're a fan of the show. I'm able, luckily, to be able to pay him to do that. But he started as volunteer helping the show. And so I think what we really need to do is make sure people are empowering their audiences, say, hey, let's grow this together, help me. And I think, they can help with these extra components of stuff. And the tools are pretty fantastic right now in doing clipping and all that stuff. So, we've even at Blubrry tried to make it easier to do clipping so that you can essentially get in and have clips made in 10, 15 minutes. But people are time constrained right now. Everyone's busy, super busy. So, and that maybe
I'm trying to learn from larger successful shows on the strategies that they're taking to find growth. And it's hard to translate that into an individual single podcaster that's just launching an audio podcast.
Well,
it's difficult
because those folks have teams.
Well, that's exactly kind of my point.
Right.
Todd, is that it's increasingly taking a team to build a podcast now. Well, and I'm not sure that the industry is really talking about the professionalization of this medium in a way that is, accessible to new creators like it was in the past.
But again, those people that have teams are already generally have been successful in
making revenue, right?
Content already. So it's not, again, there's not an apples and apples situation here. They started at a different level. They started like an Oprah, at that level, they were already a semi-celebrity, so it's hard. It's almost impossible to make those comparisons. And again, I think as an individual podcaster that does not have a team, which again makes up probably 85% of the podcasting space today, they just got to do what they got to do. They got to be able to work. Rob, I just remember years and years and years ago, people used to ask me, how do you have time? How do you have time? I didn't sleep. So, but it wasn't all about promoting the show. It was running a business, working, and doing a podcast, and kids.
Right.
And
so now it's like the number one question that I get asked is, can I make money from the first episode?
No. Yeah, 10 cents.
See, that's part of what the conversation is now, right? And because what's happened is that people have a need for that. And and this whole thing of creating a side hustle and creating multiple streams of income, all this kind of stuff has come into this medium and has built expectations. And so if the expectations are not fulfilled, then people get disenchanted.
Well, then someone's lying to them.
Well, no, it's based on the individual's needs. And
okay. So if you, okay.
I know this is a tough conversation because the market has shifted towards people building side hustles, and that's being heavily promoted on all these social platforms.
Then guess what side hustles require? Incredible heart. Who's making money on side hustle advice? The people that are giving a side hustle advice.
Right. Well, that's certainly true, Todd.
I agree with that. I think we have to have this reality check.
Well, that cuts both ways on this, Todd. the reality check on what's possible versus the reality check on what the hype is
well, they're completely
two different
disconnected.
spectrums.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
you know,
yeah.
they don't realize, I go back to, they don't realize that, here's the thing. You and I've been in this a long time. We didn't have Facebook, Twitter, or X. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have any of this stuff in the beginning.
TikTok and
nothing.
And even newer platforms that are coming out now that are offering a complete different content mashed with e-commerce.
We had nothing in the beginning. And can you imagine taking all this stuff away from those folks now and saying, now you need to build a show? and they wouldn't even start.
Yeah. I mean, it is now possible to launch a show. I mean, I do it. I try and do that with everybody I work with, but it's to launch with programmatic, right?
Yeah.
So that matches the expectation.
Yeah. Until they see their 10 cents.
Right. Until they see the actual check that comes, but
or not even a check until they get to $50.
But they think they've been enabled for monetization.
That's
where in the past the conversation was, well, you got to start a show, you got to do 50 episodes before you can even think about starting to make money. Was the conversation?
You see, Libsyn just made it so that you can have 0 downloads, like Blubrry and Spreaker, and we've all been allowing our podcasters to do programmatic from the beginning. But we set expectations. But it is kind of funny that they included a calculator.
Oh, they did?
They did. Here's your expected
10 downloads will give you this much income.
Here's your expected revenue. It's kind of like you have a calculator so you can have the ugly baby discussion, right?
Right.
And so obviously they're feeling the pressure to allow shows to monetize in the very beginning. But this focus on monetization, that's what I'm not hearing that conversation. I mean, maybe like 5% of my discussions I have with podcasters, that isn't the conversation I'm having. It continues to be growth. And if for new podcasters, it's a whole different, it's very, very little about monetization. So I think there's definitely these two tiers. And I think YouTubers are thinking, I gotta make money in the beginning.
Well, you do have to, even on YouTube, you have to put in some investment in producing episodes so you get qualified for monetization. It's not like starting out right at the beginning, right?
So if they want to, that's the analogy we should be giving to podcasters. Oh, I want to make money on episode 1. Well, you make money on YouTube and on episode 1? No. You have to have
YouTube makes money on episode.
Yeah, you have to make 4,000 hours of whatever it is, whatever the qualifying is. That you have to have 1,000.
It's actually 2,000 now.
Oh, they lowered it.
Yeah,
I still haven't qualified.
Yeah, it's 1,000. I think it's 1,000 subscribers and 2,000 hours of watch time.
So again,
total.
Yeah. So if they can't qualify on YouTube, then so it's just So I think we have to.
It's the same thing with Spotify.
So then we need to really tell these podcasters and however you want to call them, audio, video, or whatever. You got to build an audience. You want to make this a side hustle, and side hustles don't come with hustle.
So that's where this conversation loops back to what I was saying earlier, Todd. Given what's happening with social media, given what we're seeing, the perception of podcasting, and this was in my outline too, is increasingly being seen as part of social media. So there's like this.
Yeah, it's part of the whole package.
Munging together between what we see in social media around audio and video, primarily video on that side. So that may be contributing to this conversation about how video is entering podcasting, as we're now looking at the media landscape as being influential from a holistic perspective now. And that is driving this narrative, because I think the researchers look at YouTube and they think of it as a derivative of the social media landscape, right? So now it's being lumped in with podcasting, and we keep increasingly talking about video, which has strong linkages to social media. So that's where this conversation is becoming a little bit confused. Is that we may be talking about two different things here, two different mediums of sorts, but they're mushing together right now in people's perceptions from the audience side primarily, and it's slowly coming along from the creator side. That those YouTubers are thinking about making an audio podcast, which taps into your tool.
Yep.
Increasingly. So, this perception is merging together.
Yeah,
I think that's what's causing this
I
confusion.
think, again, I just, I've tried to let YouTube feed me some stuff here in the last couple of weeks. I haven't seen any long format podcast. I've seen 3-minute shorts. And okay, that was interesting.
That's a clue right there. I've been increasingly playing with shorts too, and I think I see stronger numbers in shorts. But the question gets back to is how does that convert into audience?
I don't think for me it doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's hard to quantify that, Todd, because there isn't any. I think that the shorts platforms need to give the ability better to have people click to another longer version of
that's missing with the logo.
Well, it is, and it's missing because a lot of these platforms want people to only be on their platform.
Of course.
So they don't really make it easy to link off to another platform. Like
X penalizes it if you put a link to something in the original post.
So what they're incentivizing is people uploading directly to their platform.
Of course.
Right? And that breaks the whole model around
lock you in.
Podcasting. It breaks it.
Yep, lock you in.
And that's another aspect of this that needs to be thought about too. There was talk at one point that X was going to support RSS feeds, but that has never materialized.
Of course, never will materialize. They will not do it. I guarantee you that if they do it, I'd be shocked. Because RSS is open, and open means, again, if you consume, I guess if they consume it on X, why would they care? If they want to,
that's the bigger takeaway here, Todd, is that, like you've been saying all these years, you don't really care where it's consumed, but you do care where it comes from.
Right.
And I think that's the other part of this, and that's what Spotify's trying to break too, is the RSS based delivery. So if we could convince X to ingest RSS feeds, then I think that would be a win-win in the bigger picture. But the bigger question is, who would actually host the media file? Would it be X? Probably.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, just like what happens with YouTube today.
Yeah. Again, I think in the end, the narrative, the article Paul did is a good first step.
Yeah.
And I think that there needs to be more companies that come out and promote audio as a continued fantastic, and I've been doing it. I've been doing it on LinkedIn. I've been doing it on my personal website. We've been talking about it at Blubrry. That the education on the creator's side, they need to understand that. I think all this video stuff aside, I think what the industry has to really come back and say is, okay, we understand this is over here. We understand there's opportunities, there's discovery, there's listeners over there that you can gain. But if you're coming in and getting started, doing audio in the beginning is okay. And actually, it's probably a good strategy to start audio first.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
Find your sea legs, find your voice, build your content, get your rapport, start getting guests booked, and if and don't worry if you don't have a face for video. Don't worry about this other stuff. You're going to have a hard enough time getting 10 good questions and pacing to ask that guest, or go solo and have content to do every week. There's a job in itself in just getting show prep done. That is more work than recording.
Yeah, but Todd, that's not necessarily the strategy for fast-growing shows, though. That's the real rub here. What is the proper strategy for growing an audio podcast?
Then put money where your mouth is. Hire a team. If you want a fast growing, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 people that are doing all of this stuff. Again, but I don't
exactly what the big creators are doing, Todd, and that's why they're being successful
and they're growing. And that's why small creators are saying, "Do I even want to do this?"
Well, I do remember a time, not too long ago, when there was a few creators that were discouraging people from starting a podcast.
Well, there's a person on Facebook right now in one of the popular groups that says, this is what he said: if you're not doing video, what are you trying to hide? What do you mean trying to hide? He's making an accusation that because you're not doing video, you have something to hide. And I thought, what an asshole. What an absolute asshole. Saying, what do you have to hide? Making an accusation that, because you're only doing audio, have something to hide. What, you going to tell that to the 65-year-old grandma that's recording a podcast? Are you going to say that to a woman that's, living in a foreign country that don't want her face to be seen? Are you going to say that to, there's just so many variables. It's wrong. And
there is another way of looking at that, and that's if those people don't want to do that, it's certainly their choice not to.
But he's making this accusation in a podcast Facebook group, and people are having feeling like they have to defend themselves.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, why? I'm not going to defend myself. I've been doing video, but if someone doesn't want to do video, I said, it's my choice. It's my show. Pack sand. So I just, I think the key in the industry is we have to it's simple. It's very simple. Audio is still incredibly viable. You can build an incredible audience. It's going to take work, lots of work. You're going to have to do all the things. You're going to have to be pre-production, production, post-production, social promotion, email newsletter sender, clip creator. You got to do all these things. You got to. That hasn't changed from 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Hasn't changed. It's the same.
It hasn't made, I was hoping by now it would be easier to get all this stuff set up, but it's not. Because
it is easier.
It's pretty fragmented. And actually, I think with the AI stuff, I think AI has added a lot of work.
Well,
it saves a little bit, but it also adds stuff.
We've done stopwatch testing.
Yeah.
From a just pure production standpoint.
Right.
It's quicker. When it comes to social, no, what it's added is before I couldn't do shorts. I couldn't. I just didn't have time.
The question is it better though?
Oh, I think
quicker,
so.
But is it
we're seeing huge
better than what a human would do?
Oh, I'm not talking about the recording of the content. I'm just talking
No, I'm talking about all of the I'm just like you, Todd. I'm talking about like the pre-production, post-production type of AI work. Right.
And I think it goes back to what I said before. You record for your audience. You do the post-production work for Google and the AI crawlers. In that regard, absolutely, it's better for those that are doing it.
Better or just more efficient?
Higher quality. For years I used to say, God, Rob, and they'd put one line as a horrible episode title and one paragraph of show notes. Now at least we're getting comprehensive show notes. We're getting transcripts. We're getting media that has been normalized. There's 4 or 5 things that have drastically improved.
Mm-hmm.
So what have we done? We've went from absolute underutilization of what you could have done if you'd have done it manually to now being just, primo in the titling and the meta content and, the transcripts and the chapters and all that stuff is just superb. Does it help the audio content? Well, that's up to the creator, right? But I think it can, being that there is, probably an outline and they can help themselves stay on track and follow a pattern with the show. But, the social piece, what it's done is I would have never, before AI, never made clips, never made shorts, never done any of that. I wouldn't have.
Yeah, it can be automated to some degree now.
Well, you still have to hand touch it.
There's the Opus Clips capable
Yeah, but it's not. You still have to touch it.
Well, if you're not doing any video, then it's not even an option for you. So
right, but we made clipping available for just pure audio podcasters. There's an image put up, and yeah. Okay. So we've got all that if you're not doing any video. So the key there is now at least they can spend the 15 minutes if they choose, which makes it longer because we've given them some tools to be able to do clips. But not everyone does. Some people just don't put their content up. So
yeah, I wonder if we'll ever get to a point, Todd, where, well, I guess that's what you're doing there, but it's creating a clip in a video, but it's just audio, right?
Right.
So you have like maybe a motion graphic or something like that.
Something similar to Headliner, what Headliner does with pure audio. Yeah.
But is that effective though, is the question.
Oh yeah. It's just as effective as anything else because it goes up on Twitter and Facebook and, it gets plays,
But it's as effective as a
I don't know.
Well-done video.
I'm sure. Again, it all depends on how many people are actually tuning into your social. So there's a whole bunch of variables. It really depends. Higher the content.
So if you were to post a motion graphics audio to TikTok, do you think it has the potential to get the same amount of engagement?
Yes, you know why? Because someone's going to flip in TikTok and not even know that you're hitting they're not seeking you out in TikTok. You just show up.
Well, also a lot of people have their audio turned off.
That's we give the closed caption. So
no, that's what I'm talking about is that a lot of people will have their audio muted.
We have
all it sees is the text on the screen.
Yeah, we have that set up. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but again, if you only have 10 followers on TikTok,
you're not going to get that much engagement.
Right. So it's all relative.
Yeah.
But, the audience is growing in podcasting. So, more opportunity for the shows that are there. For sure.
Yeah. I was looking at that Signal Hill article, Todd. I don't know if you have it up that you can pull up on the screen, but it is a little bit of a confusing message on here based on what I'm seeing, because the first slide that it has up here shows in April of 2025 that YouTube has the highest percentage of weekly podcast consumers who use the platform.
He's not
podcast consumption.
His argument is essentially that YouTube doesn't own it all.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at these two slides. So, and then the next one down, it says most used podcast platform. So we have, and then right below it says a majority, 61% of podcast consumers use other.
I agree with that.
Platforms other than YouTube most often. So
makes sense.
So, and that's kind of opposite of what the slide above it says.
No, what they're saying here is that percentage weekly podcasts who use platforms the most. So YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So Apple together they're low. This is incredibly low. Of course, we don't compare YouTube. They said 29% and YouTube is 39%. Well, where's the rest? That's all others. That's what they're referring to.
Where's the 29%?
Okay, so 21 plus 8 is 29%.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay,
right.
so if you think about 39% on YouTube, and 29% on other Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then you have, what's my math here? Let me do my fuzzy math. What is that, 78? What's that number total, grand total? Anyway, so in the end, there's a whole bunch of other listening happening somewhere else. That's just not on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's on Overcast, Pocket Cast.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where they get the 61.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's where the remaining percentage comes in.
Okay. So all the other listening platforms like Overcast and Pocket Cast and all those are part of the 61%.
And it's, it's 0.5%. It's 0.25%
or 1.5%.
And there's 100 of those that have, less than 1%.
Right.
So it's probably more. But I think the argument here is that there's a distribution of listeners.
Right.
And viewers, or whatever you want to say. And
so if you're not doing something, see, this is the conversation about growth, right? Is if you're not doing YouTube, then you're missing out on 39 possible percent of
according to this,
right?
And the opposite could be said if you're just doing YouTube, you're missing 61% of the audience. So so it goes both ways.
Well, if you're only doing
right.
Yeah, if you're only doing YouTube.
But I think I agree with what, Adam and some others have said here recently, is that this will work itself out. But we're going to have to give it a couple of years, because there's going to be all of these folks that have been sold this bill of goods, and they're going to go over there and figure out, number one, it's hard. Number two, you're not going to get monetized. And guess what? Guess what it is in audio podcasting? It's hard. You're not going to get monetized. So it's, it's.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but that's kind of a failure mentality, though, isn't it?
Well, nothing has changed.
No, I know, but if you're ambitious and you want to create a success for yourself, you probably don't think like that.
Well, if you're ambitious and you want to be a success for yourself, then you will work the hours and put in the time required to be successful. You won't be a, is there a word? You won't be a side. Okay. I know I'm going to get destroyed here. Don't be a side hustle bro that isn't able to make it with a side hustle. If everyone could make it with a side hustle, no one would have a regular job.
Well, that may be the future we're heading into, Todd, with AI.
Rob, I have a job.
I know, Todd, but you look to the future. Nobody may have a job.
Yeah. That again. There.
So what's the alternative for us? As you look out 2 to 5 years from now, all of us may have to create side hustles at some point.
Well,
Right?
I'll use the word that Gogo said. I heard this more than 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's the people that are the creative types. They're going to be super good. They're going to be great. There's the subject matter experts. They're going to be super great. They're good. It's people in the middle that does the thunking. They're screwed. A case in point, I've got an employee. I don't know. Did I tell you on this in the last show? I've got an employee. She's getting, I won't say her age, but she's ready to spend more time with her grandkids.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. Okay. And she came to us and said, hey, I don't want to do full time anymore. I want to knock back to 35 hours.
Right.
And we only work. We actually pay our employees for 40 hours for 36 hours of work anyway. So she wanted, maybe she went back to 30 hours, but anyway, she wanted to go back to less hours. And she says, I'm able to get the work done anyway, because I'm using AI and we're just being more effective. And so essentially, even though she's rolled back her time, we're essentially getting about the same performance with her having to work less hours. And I didn't plan it that way. It's just kind of the way it happened. So, but she's happy. She doesn't have to be in meetings that we're doing every day of the week. You know, she sees what her tasks are in Jira, and you know, it works out. So AI is going to have an effect for sure. I think it'll have a big effect. But Apple, and I don't know about Apple and what they announced. To me, it's just, It was good that Colin got a shout out with his app. He got a whatever 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever it was. His app.
Colin who?
I'm trying to think of his last name.
Ray?
Colin Gray. Yeah. So
so what was his app?
His app is Altuo. Holy crap.
Oh, yeah.
Altuo, yeah. So he got a call out during the WWDC keynote. And so
I think it's Alto.
Alto, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but good to him. Colin, he's one of these unsung heroes. He drove us an incredible amount of business in his early days of podcasting. He was one of our top affiliates for a number of years. And then
he's out of the UK.
Yeah, now he's kind of doing his own thing. So I'm exceptionally happy for him on what he got there. But so they've done some stuff. You got a list here: enhanced dialogue, custom playback speeds. Woohoo! Marco, I think there was someone kind of did a giggle that Marco's worried now because of the custom playback speeds. Don't listen at 1.2 or 1.5. It'll make you. There is some truth to this. Don't laugh at me. If you listen to shows faster than 1.0 speed, it can cause higher levels of anxiety. So just be careful.
I get stressed out by it.
Oh, I can't do it. It's just like drink 5 cups of coffee and so
it's just too much.
Yeah.
You're trying to live your life and not get
doing mic routing. Oh, the AirPods. Please don't record a podcast with AirPods. But, some will. It's okay.
Well, I think that the mic routing is you can assign a different microphone to each app or a different app, right? So if you have
if it's pre-configured, you don't have to change it.
Correct. So
what's happening is they're making, for those of you that are Mac users, the iPad in iOS 26 is going to have a departure. It's going to be more like the desktop or your laptop than it is like the iPhone. So they're aligning them much, much closer together. You'll have kind of similar experience. But this glass thing that they're doing, it's got me worried. They're smart. We'll see what happens.
What's the big revolution around this glass thing?
Yeah, it's a UI thing. It's
I know,
just
but
to make it.
Is it just a gimmick?
I think it's still try to look pretty. Who knows?
It's just a gimmick.
I don't stare. I just want my phone to be usable. I don't need a gimmick. Let me get to my email quicker. Let me get to my text message.
Yeah, I mean, when's Apple going to actually come out with anything that's innovative? I don't see anything on this list that I consider to be innovative.
A lot of stuff the Android's already done, but they trade feature stuff all the time.
Yeah, I know that Tim Cook's been under a little bit of external pressure by the Apple community to resign.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?
Well, because Apple seems to be stuck. That they're not really announcing any new products. They're not really announcing anything that was like what they used to do when Steve Jobs was in charge, right?
Well,
where they would come out with a new device or a new platform that was changing the game.
You know what I think the majority
just small updates. It's just small little changes is all that they announce
I
now.
bet you if we could get inside data to the usage of iPhone or an Android, I bet you it would be broken down into about 5 things: taking pictures,
Yeah.
sending SMS messages,
Right.
talking on Facebook, and listening to music. I think, and maybe some games.
And
What
some
else?
podcasts.
And some podcasts. But what else are people using their phones for? And
Well, I
most
think a
people
lot
are
of
not.
people, I mean, Todd, I mean, just think about the app infrastructure, right? And also
Yeah.
contrast that to what's going on with AI. Apple seems to not get or understand or
Oh,
know
they're behind.
how to deploy AI, which is that's going to hurt them.
Well,
Actually, I sold all my stock, or actually most of my stock in Apple, because I've kind of lost faith in the
I
company.
think what they're also seeing is we have to be really careful, even internally in the company. We scrutinize everything that's an output of AI. And invariably, we will find, and when we're editing documents, we will find 1 or 2 things typically that is wrong. And,
Yep.
we have to be real careful that we don't get into this sing-song type of publishing of content that all looks the same. So we have to really work hard at it. So my thought maybe is that Apple said it's not ready. And, they're pretty particular about what they put out, or they're just simply behind. And they move slow. It's as evident in the podcast app.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And they didn't add the toggle between audio and video
No,
this time.
no, I didn't. If we get that, it'll be 2 years.
Well, that speaks to the problem here, Todd.
Well, and I look at even internally at my company, I can only turn stuff out. So if I'm a small company and I got a small dev team, believe it or not, the Apple Podcast team has a relatively, my understanding, and I might be wrong, so I might be speaking out of my butt here, but they have a relatively small timeshare of amount of time the dev utilization they get on the Apple Podcast app. There's not I don't think there's dedicated programmers for the Apple Podcast app. I don't think so. Maybe this is my hypothesis.
No, I'm sure there's not. I mean, that's just one of the apps that the team updates occasionally.
But what's something I've got the team looking into it. We had an unusual spike in Apple Podcast utilization in May. They had a 10 point jump off of average, and I got the team digging into why. And
in the usage or the downloads?
in the percentage of usage, and they went from 49 to 59. And usually we'll see hover 2 or 3 points, but I got one of my devs looking into it, figuring out where did this bump come from.
Yeah, because it seems like some of these things that Apple added should be pretty low on the priority as far as features to add to any platform. I mean, it's like look at like the custom icons and stuff like that. With different colors.
Some of that stuff is just easy. It's easy. It's low hanging fruit. It's just easy. Well, yeah. It's easy to do. So, maybe, I've got all kinds of, I have this short list of like 3 hours of coding time.
Auto sleep detection, detection. Is that really a feature that anybody really cares about? I know.
You see what I have? You see what I have here? I have my fly swatter. I got a fly that's been dive bombing me for 2 days.
I thought to tell you, you were talking about bug killing in Apple's platform.
I have a fly that's been dive bombing me for 2 days. He doesn't know it yet. Either time or I will get him with the fly swatter. And I've had a shower today. So yeah,
you got the killer instinct, Todd.
Yes, and the key is you have to be careful where you slap around here, because I may end up jacking the switcher, and then it will show something weird on my screen. So who knows?
Yeah, or my audio will go mute all of a sudden.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, so what's going on with the Podcast Hall of Fame?
Well, it's ramping back up. So I'm trying to get it. I've done some calls with the Podfest folks, and we're strategizing about how we want to move forward. So that's the stage that we're at. I know we're about 6 months out now. So this is the kickoff time to start gathering any new nominations for consideration.
Oh, so who should they email you?
If you want to send me an email, that's fine. rob.greenlee@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to consider nominations at this point and to add to the pool of folks. I haven't publicly released the list of the current nominations that are in the list.
Have we done that before?
I've never done that before.
Are you going to do that this year?
That I might consider doing that, just so people know who's in the list or not. I don't know. I don't think that. What's your thought about that, Todd?
I don't think it would hurt. Transparency is always good.
Yeah.
And then what it would do is it would cause people to say, how come he or she is not on the list? But you also have to make sure you put the criteria there on what the qualifications are to get on the list.
Oh, that's already on the website.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
So, well, the Academy Awards, they always say who the nominees are. Yeah,
it can be a pretty long, I think it's currently probably close to probably 80 names so far. So, it might help those that are considering to nominate someone to know who's already nominated, right? So I don't get a bunch of emails from people saying, well, this person should be inducted but they're already on the list.
So the challenge then is when someone knows they're on the list, because I don't know if people even know they're on the list.
There's probably most of them on the list probably don't even know. Right.
So if they know they're on the list, then it could end up being campaigns of emails to the other, say, hey, please vote for me. Here's who I am.
And I also want to expand the pool of voters too. So
yeah, then how do you do that? Now, who would you invite? There has to be some criteria to that.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, I haven't actually specified that, so I don't even want to say.
Yeah, and again, how do you come up with that list? Yeah,
because currently the only voters that exist in the Hall of Fame are people that have already been inducted.
Because I'm just going to use a name here, and let's say you invited James Cridlin to vote. Then could he, if he gets on the list, he would be then probably excluded from being able to vote. So how do you then, there's the problem. If you have, I don't know, I think
it's clear that you can say in the rules you can't vote for yourself, but yeah. So I think that's probably covered by that.
Here's the guarantee. Someone would be pissed off no matter what.
Of course. But that's just a given, Todd. Because I made a lot of statements last year that I was going to expand it internationally.
Yeah.
And so the only way that I can see that I can actually accomplish that is
to get some other people,
pool of voters.
Oh.
And to people outside of the U.S. too. Not so much. Most of the people that are voting today are people in the U.S.
So what we should actually have is another Hall of Fame in London. Associated with the podcast show. Doesn't have to be as big of a deal, but there could be look at James, he got recognized by the Academy of Podcasters, and I don't know how that happened. That was kind of outside. Again, he deserves it, but again, then what criteria? Because there's a lot of people that should be in the Hall of Fame that we're so backlogged.
Yeah.
And if you're going to open up international, there should be some, maybe it's not as a grand of event, but figure something out where they can have an interview that tells their story that's so important that happens during the award ceremony. That's the true value of hearing these people's stories. That's the incredible part about the people that are actually nominated. That basically they're the winners, or don't want the winners, but who makes up the inductees, those stories they tell. And you would not want to discount the inductees telling their story, but it'd be nice if we could maybe start in Europe.
Yeah, I was thinking about this just like a couple of weeks ago, that there isn't a lot of examples of an event like the Podcast Hall of Fame that is truly international.
Right.
I know that there's a Hollywood kind of awards ceremony. I think it's the International Press awards event that happens down in LA every year, which is international. The other element of this too is that sure, we can have nominees that are from Europe and from Asia and all that kind of stuff that can be added to the list. But the question gets back to is, will those people actually travel to accept their awards anyway? So those people could, I guess, do a video.
So maybe the opportunity is you have a London event for people in Europe. Then you have something in Australia that someone down there some event that happens in Australia, the people that deserve to be, and maybe it's Australian Podcast Hall of Fame.
Right.
They have 4 or 5 people that are
Southeast Asia's Podcast Hall of Fame.
And, so maybe it's, you can't do it all in one go, but maybe you could do Australian, you can do maybe Australia, New Zealand. And of course, I don't know a lot of podcasts out in New Zealand, but mostly Australia. But maybe you could do, because I'm sure there's down there, they have their own, I don't know the characters in Australia, but James and other folks do. So you may have to do like Gary did the first year. Say, okay, here's the first 5 people that we're going to induct in Australia, or give me the list.
Yeah, I suppose, if it was set up like a small group in Australia organized a local in-person Hall of Fame event, right?
Yeah.
So it isn't like, every event has to be organized from here necessarily. Right. And have that scattered around the world, like in Asia. Mm-hmm. You can have one in Asia and Malaysia or a place like that covers that part of the world, and then have one down in Australia that covers that area down there, which isn't that far away.
And I think you honor them all the same. You put them on the Podcast Hall of Fame site by region, and maybe it's not even by region. Maybe it's just they're in the list. Yeah. I think it's doable. It's just not going to be maybe done the way from a presentation wise that you want, but there's just so many deserving folks.
Maybe it's something that I can get into a partnership with the podcast show to put on in London to cover Europe. But
they don't have they have stage events, so maybe it can be,
So it would still be the Podcast Hall of Fame. It just would be like almost like a chapter of the event.
And those trophies aren't cheap, so they would take some money.
Oh yeah,
to do it.
I plan on trying to obtain more sponsorships this year,
because I think those trophies are like $400 a piece.
I don't know that.
I think that's what I paid for my replacement was $370. Yeah. But
okay.
Anyway,
I think it's definitely in that 300.
Yeah, they're a hunk, or they're a rock. But anyways,
they're crystal.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah, it causes my
nice.
you can see it on the causes the shelf to sag.
Right. You can see mine up here. Right
yeah, your shelf is sagging too.
No, I don't think it's that.
You need an extra 10 pounds on the airline to go home.
Right.
So
I think that I'm gonna update the website here soon, and I'll just put up the list of names of nominees in there, and I'll put out a press release, and we will start out there, and then at the bottom of that announcement, I'll say, if you think that some person that or the person thinks that they qualify for consideration of a nomination, and to be potentially included, then send me an email and I'd be happy to do that. And if I can add a form somewhere,
I think a
then I
form
could do
and
that
collect the
too.
information, because we don't know everybody.
Right.
And good bios too from, you know,
Well, I did that for last year. Actually, I use an electronic voting system
yeah,
is
yeah.
what I used last year. And I was able to put in photographs and bios into
Because
each
some of the people I
person's.
had no idea who they were.
Yeah, and that's the challenge right there, Todd, is that if we get people into the nomination list that nobody's ever heard of before, right, then they're never going to vote for them,
Right.
right? So, and even putting a bio in there may not get them to vote for them.
But
So
if
that's
everyone
the
in the
challenge.
group, because we have a lot of people that are not, you know, I think they should at least be known.
Yeah,
But again, some
yeah,
people have done some incredible stuff that are not known.
right. And I think it may be just to get on the nomination for consideration should be a perceived kind of accomplishment. Right.
And maybe there needs to be so many people that actually prove that person to get on the nomination list. Maybe there needs to be like 5, 6, 7, 10 people to review the people that are going to be on the and you know, you hate to do
Well, it
that.
should be, yeah, it should be probably the board.
Yeah, I
So,
think so. Yeah, you know, and maybe it only takes, you know, a simple majority, 3 out of 5 or whatever the number is.
okay.
You know, because
Yeah, I can
you know,
handle that.
if as long as there's a bio, and then we can all do our own due diligence, go out on Google and look their shows up or whatever they've done. And someone may be able to vouch for somebody too. They may say, "Oh yeah, my God, look what that individual has done. They've
Okay.
done this,
Yeah.
this, and this."
Yeah, I think for any new nominees for consideration, I think that should be the process.
Yeah, we don't want to
So,
exclude anybody. We want to give as much benefit of the doubt as possible. But you start showing the list, next thing you know, you're going to have 100 people that say, how come I'm not on there?"
right.
So, you know, that and then
Yeah, and then it makes a complicated
it does.
situation for the voting block of people that have to sift through,
And
like
if there's
two or 300 names or something.
and if there's a public list of who's on and who's been accepted, then the person's going to be pissed if they're not accepted. Well, look at them. They're all biased. And so there's no perfect
Well,
solution.
yeah, it's the same thing with sports, Todd. There's winners and losers.
There's no. So anyway, we're already over. Quick take. Best advice for new creators?
I think my best advice is that, start where you can.
Yes.
Start audio. I would first consider just audio at the beginning, but don't lock your mind out of try and create some shorts that are just created on your mobile phone and explore that and see if that makes sense for you but create a as compelling of an audio experience and an audio program as you can for your genre and your show, and create terrific graphics, and your cover art is so important now. What's the title? What's the mission of the show? What are you trying to do? And then in the podcast itself, and we're seeing this trend line also in YouTube too. It's not all about these polished productions. There's this movement that's going on around, just like what I asked to do in this episode today, Todd, was not play any intro music, right? It's just us, right? Let's just jump in, create the content, and then we get out of here, not with a bunch of
You don't. You mean you don't want any of this? Welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, it's unnecessary, and especially in the age that we're in right now, is that the only time that you should do that is if there's some sort of a tease in there, right, about what the listener's going to get by listening or viewing this, right? That is like teasing you, and you're increasingly seeing that in the content that's being produced on YouTube. And I've been doing it in my audio podcast for years. We'll say, well, these are the topics in the show today, and then say, please keep listening. And that's what I'd like to do with this show too, is to tease the topics that we're going to talk about on the show and be disciplined and stick to it, right?
So
and cover those at least. I mean, we can expand beyond that if we want. But
so my best advice is just please start. Don't listen to any of this advice that's out here. And by the way, the Felix said in the chat, he said, Canada, don't forget about Canada for Hall of Fame. They're included. Canada's already included in the nomination stack. So U.S. and Canada are included already for Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and to be fair, we need to consider Mexico too.
True.
So and then there's South America too, which Todd, you and I both know is huge in podcasting.
Need someone that can speak Portuguese to run that up.
Right.
So
it's not us, Todd.
All right. So we didn't go. We went 70. So we're going to get out of here. And
we had a lot to talk about. It was like 2 weeks.
Well, I've got a. Did you listen to the last show I recorded?
I did.
Okay, good. Is that why you're back? Because I didn't dog you in the commentary?
Well, it wasn't that as much as I was just kind of the posing of the question: should we continue doing this show? Is it relevant to people? And it also, maybe is a little bit of a reset for us, right? As we think about what we're doing with this show and what the flow of it and how it works and how it conforms into the expectations in the market today.
So the stuff we didn't cover that you let us know if you want us to cover.
There's a lot.
Was sound profitable on their attention and trust. Just go look at their presentation. Tom can explain it better than we can. There's a bunch of stuff. Companies I've never heard of that got IB certified. And some benchmarks that are out there on promo code utilization that I completely disagree with. But anyway,
so are you getting pulled into the whole kind of confusing conversation around Substack?
No,
that's happening in the podcasting space right now.
No,
I've noticed that there's some people that are hosting their podcast on Substack.
Oh, great!
So Substack has built a very confusing podcasting tool.
It's been there for a long time.
Well, they've been promoting it more here lately, and I've seen some large creators get in there and do something with it. And I'm like a little bit confused that they've been promoting it so heavily, but in my perception, it's not really all that great. So it's a little bit like what happened with SoundCloud, right? Where they promoted something, they offered it, a lot of people adopted it, but yet it just never improved.
It's just, and not to dog them, but there was a site that launched called Proxy Feed that were promoting how you could have all these podcasting 2.0 features if you moved over there and use them. And I went on their website. They only have one podcasting 2.0 feature implemented. And I'm like, oh, okay.
I guess that's all it took to make the claim, Todd.
So, not that we've done anything like that at all with our service. So, it's okay. I just kind of had to giggle. It's all promoting about podcasting 2.0, and they got to start somewhere. So, Proxy Feed, just go over and look at Podcast Mirror, tell us what else we should do. But they are mapping subdomains, so that's smart. Okay, Todd at blubrry.com, at Geek News on X, and my Mastodon is at Geek News at geeknews.chat. Rob?
All right, I'm on X, at Rob Greenlee, robgreenlee.com as the primary places to find me. And then also we're working on a new podcast, Todd. So I may shut down some of the other things that I've been working on because I've got too many podcasts and really put my energy into a new show. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going. And I've got more things that I want to, announce over the next few weeks in regards to that and some other things that I've been getting involved in. So it's just, take it as it comes. And the Hall of Fame is building too. And I'm going to be doing some other things with that as well. So hopefully it's going to be a compelling thing this year.
Sounds like a new job.
Kind of. It's more of a kind of like a co-founder type of.
Oh, okay.
Type of a relationship.
I am doing some additional shows. We just been kind of working on them, and they are in Apple Podcast, but they are originate on YouTube, and then it's called the Podcast News and Podcast Myth podcast. So I'm trying to put out one a week, 5 minutes. It's about the length of it. And so anything we're putting on YouTube right now is also coming in as an audio podcast. So we're staying true to using our own tools, drinking our own Kool-Aid. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're trying to get to an hour and a half. We're an hour 16, so let's get out of here. See everybody. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Okay.